It's really an honor to be here, and it's exciting that this is even a topic of discussion. So I'm going to talk to you about the work that we've done at MIT Enterprise Forum Greece on activating the diaspora. I'll give you a brief background of my story, talk about the state of entrepreneurship in Greece, what startups need to succeed, and how the diaspora can help. So very briefly, my story, I went to Brown University. I worked as a banker on Wall Street in corporate finance. And that was a lot of fun, but I didn't feel like I was actually creating something. I always had a dream of being an entrepreneur, and I wanted to make a physical product. So I went to work at Thermoelectron, which is a technology conglomerate. And my goal was to get experience on technology business and how it runs, with the goal of starting up my own business. And I went there thinking that if you understand finance, you understand everything you need to know about a business. But working in a technology company, what I learned is that I was really lacking experience and knowledge on technology. So I went to MIT and got my master's in mechanical engineering with the sole purpose of being able to manage engineers in a startup environment. I never had any engineering aspirations or capability particularly. So after graduating from MIT, I thought the one piece that I was really missing was management. And so I wanted to get some management experience, and I applied for jobs. But I was told that I didn't have management experience, so I couldn't get them. So I was in a catch-22. Without the experience, I couldn't get the job. Without the job, I couldn't get the experience. So I was forced to do my startup earlier than I had hoped. But I think this is not too different than a lot of Greeks right now in Greece, where maybe they had hoped to get some experience, maybe they had hoped to get a job, and it wasn't out there for them, and so they go and do a startup on their own. And so that was sort of what happened to me. So I went to the licensing office at MIT, and I looked for a technology to commercialize. And I saw some amazing technologies, and the one that really stuck out was one in 3D printing. This is back in 1994, before the term 3D printing existed. And we started the company. 4 of us co-founded it, and I'll talk to you about that in a moment. We sold it 10 years later, and since that time, I've been on some corporate boards, public company, mid-sized private, as well as small startups. I love advising and mentoring startups, and I do a little bit of angel investing. Just to give you some background on Z Corporation, starting a hardware business in 1994 was very much out of sync with what was happening in the world. Everything was all about the internet and all about software. And so we were not able to raise venture capital. Again, very similar to a lot of Greek startups. So we had to focus very early on profits and cash flow, and we had to find alternative sources of funding. So we ended up raising money from our board of directors, who were some angel investors, as well as corporate strategic investors. We grew the business over 10 years to $30 million in revenues, and we had 125 employees. We sold 3D printers all around the world, and it was a great ride. It's an amazing technology. It was a lot of fun building a team and seeing this technology grow. But after 10 years, I was burnt out. I have 4 kids and needed to have a change of pace. So we sold it, and over the last 10 years, I've been on corporate boards and doing some angel investing. But my involvement with Greece actually started a couple of years ago. I was actually invited to Israel to take a trip and with the mayor. And we saw a lot of startups. It was all around technology. And I learned about Startup Nation and what was happening over there, and met a lot of entrepreneurs over there. And I was so inspired by what I saw, and I saw so many connections to Greece. Culturally, it's so similar to Greece. And the approach of the people in terms of having one foot there and one foot in the States, where they have a home in Tel Aviv, or they have family in Israel and they do business in Boston. I sort of had an aha moment, and I thought if they can do it there with missiles coming at them, why can't we do it in Greece? And one thing that I noticed was how strong the relationships were between the Israelis and the Bostonians, that there were so many relationships between those two people, and there's like 2 degrees of separation between any two people that you meet in Boston with some connection to Israel. So it seemed like there was something there that we could tap into. Just to give you a sense, Israeli-founded businesses generate $9 billion of revenue in Massachusetts, only in Massachusetts. So that relationship is incredibly powerful. And one outcome of that is after 20 years, they finally got a direct flight from Boston to Tel Aviv. So my secret interest in all this is to get a flight from Boston to Athens. I'm hoping in 20 years we can make that a reality. So the Israeli model is to have the development team in Israel and have a front-facing sales and marketing team and CEO headquarters based in Boston. And that works very well. The CEO goes back and forth. And we're actually seeing that model be adopted. So for example, Workable is a successful Greek startup. The CEO goes back and forth, but they've got a big development team in Athens. And then they have the sales and marketing team in Boston. And that works very well. Culturally, Boston is very comfortable for Greeks. It's very easy to get back and forth. And so that model can work very well. What I've learned about entrepreneurship in Greece is that it kind of came out of this terrible place, right? The economy shrank by 25% over 6 years. 1 million jobs were lost. Unemployment hit a peak of 28% and over 50% for the youth. And out of this sort of complete decimation of the economy came a new interest in startups. And you know, if you think about it, there's no way this could have happened a decade earlier. If 70% of the people are working in cushy jobs for the government where they don't have to work very hard, why would you do a startup? Why would you take that risk? It would make no sense. It would be foolish. But today, with no jobs available, what else are you going to do? So the youth is very well educated. They want to do something. And what else are they going to do? So they do startups, and they've got nothing to lose by taking a risk. So there are 2 ways to look at this. It did come from a very difficult place in Greece's economic history, but it's providing an opportunity that never could have happened without that crisis. The startup economy is being fueled by IT, which has very low investment requirements. You can do a startup with very little on your mom's couch. But what I'm hoping is, as this grows and entrepreneurship becomes an aspiration, there's a lot of research taking place at the universities and at research centers all around Greece. And I think there's a real opportunity to take a lot of the hard science that's being developed in Greece and commercialize that. And that takes time to do. It takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more investment capital. And it takes a change in culture by the professors in the universities to be willing to take a little more risk. But I think this will happen. Greeks make natural entrepreneurs. They're scrappy, they're assertive, they're resilient, they're independent thinkers. They're willing to argue their point. They're willing to negotiate. So this is actually a very good fit for the sort of mentality of the Greek people. Entrepreneurship in Greece, part of it is coming from research centers like CERTH, Demokritos, and Forth. Thessaloniki is this amazing hub with over $500 million in research budget coming from the EU as well as regional funds. And they have already this model of R&D in Greece and sales in the US in companies like Skooks and Book and Bloom. There are incubators and accelerators all over, like the Egg, which I'm associated with, Cube, I4G, Thessaloniki Innovation Zone, Coralia, and Venture Garden. There are startup competitions like MIT Enterprise Forum Greece and the Hellenic Entrepreneurship Award. And there's venture capital. There are several Jeremy funds, and now there are other additional funds. 20 funds invest around 80 million euros, much of which has already been invested. So now there's going to be a new onslaught of newer funds. But there's not enough capital yet, so this needs to continue to grow. What's the point of entrepreneurship? So this is really important. My whole interest in all of this is this concept of there are great people in Greece. They want to stay in Greece. They want to live in Greece, and they need a reason to stay. And so the idea is to create jobs. And that doesn't mean create jobs at the exclusion of creating other jobs. So as I say, this model can work where you're creating jobs in Greece and also creating jobs for Greeks outside of Greece. But I was giving a presentation a few months ago, and some anarchists in the room were upset and saying, you know, there are no jobs here in Greece. Why are you talking about startups? And it just boggled my mind that they don't understand the whole point of entrepreneurship is to create jobs. So that's why I'm here today. That's the whole idea here. And it also provides upward social mobility. If you look at the Greece of whatever, 50 years ago, a lot of it was based on who you knew. The really exciting thing about entrepreneurship, it's about what you can do. And so it can be a great equalizer in society, which I think is exciting. In today's environment, startups require very little capital to get off the ground, which is very different than years gone by. And creating opportunities in Greece will help curtail the brain drain. People want to stay, they just need a reason. I also believe that, you know, if you look at the Greek economic crisis, all the discussion is around shuffling money around. So can we raise taxes? Can we renegotiate the debt? And it's all about trying to get one person to give up their money to give it to the government. And ultimately, there just isn't enough money there. It's just, you can't solve the problem that way. The only way you're going to ultimately solve it in the long run, not today and not next week, but in the long run, is to create growth in the Greek economy. And so I think this is really ultimately the way for Greece to get out of its problems. And what's exciting about that is it provides independence and a control over its destiny. And so that's both for the individual, providing independence and a control over their own destiny, and for the country as a whole, to not be stuck where it is today, beholden to other powers. Doing a startup in Greece is a great aspiration, but it's not easy. And this is a lot of the work that needs to be done going forward. The biggest hurdle is the environment. So you've got regulations, as we all know, taxes, which are forever changing, a risk-averse climate. Your mother thinks you're crazy to do a startup. Strikes all over the place, anti-capitalism, and general political mayhem. But a lot of these weaknesses can actually be strengths. And it's interesting because I see a very different environment in Boston, which is much more startup friendly, but that can promote things that are not ultimately beneficial for the startup. So some of the weaknesses in Greece that can be strengths is that you're required to go global early because your market in Greece is not big enough to sustain a large high growth business. And so this global mentality can actually be very useful for a company. The other is you have to bootstrap to early profitability. And I actually think this is one of the biggest strengths. It's the biggest weakness and the biggest strength of the Greek startup economy, which is that you really have to have a real business. And one thing you see in places like Boston or Silicon Valley or New York is that there's so much capital available that a lot of times capital is being thrown at entrepreneurial teams who don't necessarily know where their market is, and then they spend a lot of money and burn through it before they realize they have to pivot and go in a different direction. whereas Greek startups have to be pretty focused and they have to find their market and find their customers. And so ultimately, I think that builds a discipline in an entrepreneurial team that can be very valuable. The other is access to strong, well-educated technical talent. There's a strong, big pool of talent in Greece that has been very well educated by the technical universities. And they're there, they're available, and Google isn't poaching them, Apple isn't poaching them. And I'll tell you, when we started Z Corporation, and this goes back, and nothing has changed since then in terms of hiring software engineers, it was so expensive and so difficult to hire software engineers that we ultimately had to hire a chemist to write our software and our user interface. And today, it's only worse because you've got these huge companies that are poaching them all the time, offering them tons of money. And so it's very hard for a startup to retain talent like that. But if you're in Greece, nobody's stealing your talent. You know, they're there, they want to stay, they've got a good job. So, and that's not a small factor. If you can have a strong team that's loyal, that's not, when, the guys at Workable, people ask them, what's your retention rate? And when they were first asked that question, they didn't even know what it meant, because that's just not an issue for a Greek startup. So as Albert Einstein said, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. And so I think that's the flip side of this economic crisis. I wanted to give you a little bit of background on entrepreneurship at MIT. Today, there are 30,000 active companies that come from MIT alums. They're creating 5 million jobs today with $2 trillion in annual revenue, making it the 10th largest economy if it were a country. The 100K startup competition has created over 60 companies valued at $10.5 billion worldwide, companies like Akamai and Dropbox. MIT Enterprise Forum is a global network of local organizations that focus on early-stage technology entrepreneurs. The idea is to educate them and provide a network to connect them. So you can see, you can see the map. It's located all over the world, and the idea is to turn ideas into world-changing companies. MIT Enterprise Forum Greece has events for inspiration and for networking. There are workshops by local and international partners. They have a startup competition, which is just getting going for this coming cycle, and an accelerator program. And that culminates in June with a one-week startup boot camp at MIT. And it provides global visibility through MIT Technology Review. What do Greek startups need to succeed? So one thing is they need corporate partnerships. They need customers. They need funding, and that can be through angels, through venture capitalists, customers, distributors, or other strategic investors. They need mentors. That's absolutely critical. It's very hard to operate alone. These entrepreneurs don't have experience. They need to be able to tap into people who have experience in commercializing technology. So I'm going to talk about those top elements. One thing that we don't get involved in, but that Greek startups do need, is a supportive government. So they need consistent tax laws that don't change all the time. They need business-friendly legislation that doesn't change all the time. They need a strong corporate veil that limits personal liability. Stock options to provide incentive to employees. This is something that US employees take for granted, that they get a piece of the action. So they're going to work really, really hard, but if things go well, they're going to really own a piece of that pie. And they need a court system that's efficient and strong. So for example, if there's patent infringement, we had infringers to our patents. We were able to take them to court and stop them. The other is a change in culture. So it's a positive can-do attitude that overcomes challenges, that says failure is okay. That's a change in the Greek mentality. And most importantly, that entrepreneurship is a realistic aspiration. And so that's the most important thing about these early Greek startup successes like Workable, is that they're providing inspiration to the Greeks in Greece that want to do a startup, that actually they can make it work. There is a way to get around the bureaucracy and build a real startup. So out of MIT Enterprise Forum Greece, we started a Diaspora Group, and the idea was to connect the technology Greeks in Boston to the technology Greeks in Athens and forge this bridge between the two. So we educate the diaspora on the Greek startup scene. We've had panel with entrepreneurs from Greece talk about what it's like to do a startup in Greece and some of the challenges that they face. And we've had presentations from the competition finalists from the startup competition over cocktails to talk about what their businesses are and to help them network. We also invited the Greek Diaspora Group to come to Athens to see the Startup Competition Awards in June. And we've been providing connections and networking. And we allow people to make very easy asks. Does anyone know the VP of Engineering at Gillette, for example? I may not know the answer, but I might know someone who does. And then gives. So we had the CTO of Kayak, based in Boston, say, hey, we just took some extra space, some new space, and we have extra space. We have a few extra desks. If any Greeks are coming over, let them know they can come and have a place to work. And it's been great. So when Greeks come over there, they have a desk they can go to and a friendly face. They can have a place they can call home for the few weeks that they're in Boston. Some of the learning points in building this diaspora group, there are definitely some cultural differences, and those are fascinating. There's a different time scale sometimes in email response. I'm always Mrs. in Greece, which I find really strange. In Boston, you immediately go to a first name basis. And you sort of figure this out. People are busy. So in this diaspora group, everyone has their real job. This isn't like a full-time job for anyone. But they want to help. They want to make connections. And ultimately what we've seen, it's all about the personal relationships. And so having in-person get-togethers is hugely valuable. Doing it virtually, electronically, is okay in between in terms of keeping people up to date on what's happening. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to those personal relationships where people build a rapport. The power of the network is unbelievable. It's each of us has our own network, and if we're willing to share that with the people that we're trying to help in Greece, it gives them access to this enormous global network that there's no way they could have access to otherwise. We are trying, in terms of some of the things that we're trying to build going forward, because we certainly don't have all the answers and we haven't done everything yet, but one is building useful content for the startups. So these startups in Greece can learn about what are startups in Boston doing, what are some of the things they can learn from that experience. We're trying to also give exposure of the startups to the diaspora group so that the diaspora group knows what these startups are doing. And so then the light can go on, oh, geez, I know another business that might be useful to them. Let me make that connection. We're going to be getting demos and trials of the products of these startups to the diaspora group for early beta testing. But the biggest need right now is capital. These startups need capital. And there is some capital, but not enough. So in terms of what we're planning for the future, ideally what we'd like to do is develop a crowdfunding platform. So the Greek diaspora could invest. And so somebody who's a doctor, let's say, in the UK, who knows nothing about technology, nothing about investing, might say, I want to give back, I want to help, but I don't want to, go investing $1 million in something that I know nothing about, but I'm willing to invest $100. And we found some platforms, so hopefully we can get that going to allow people to make micro investments in these startups. They see something that's of interest, and they can invest, which is not a giveaway. It's putting money in, and if that company is successful, you will get back. And I think This work at MIT Enterprise Forum, what really excites me about it is that it's not a charitable donation. It's all about empowering Greeks who want to stay in Greece to create their own destiny. So we would also like to grow the Diaspora Group, so I'm excited about seeing all of you people here. We need a London base, so I think that would be great. And then, as I mentioned before, we'd like to commercialize research at the universities and research institutes. That's going to take longer to do. That's not an easy thing to do, and it does require capital. But there is great research taking place, and so we need to make that happen. So the call to action for all of you here, please come and attend the Start Smart conference on November 5th in Athens. It's around the corner. If you go to mitefgreece.org, you can learn all about it, and you can see what's happening in Greece. If you're a new entrepreneur, enter the startup competition. It's not too late for this cycle. If you are a business veteran, please be a mentor or a judge in the startup competition. We have mentors and judges from all over the world. It's actually a great way to network with other business people all over. Come to Athens to watch the awards ceremony in June. A year and a half ago, we had the first one, and it was right after the Ochi vote. And all of Greece was so depressed. I mean, the spirit in Greece could not have been worse. It was really in shambles. And you walked into that auditorium and heard these entrepreneurs talk about what they were doing. And it was so exciting. It was like you entered this little cocoon of excitement and enthusiasm and optimism. There's a future for Greece. Things are happening. People have energy. They're making things happen. It was amazing. So I really encourage you to attend. It's great to experience and to see what's happening there directly. Invest in a Greek startup. Hopefully we'll get this platform up and running, but if you have any opportunity to do so, a small amount goes such a long way. You can't believe it. It's investing €1 in Greece is basically like investing $5 or €5. It's really powerful. Join the Diaspora Group. I don't know if, you can read it there. It's kind of long, sorry about that. But please join the Diaspora Group. We want you there. We want your input. We want you to get engaged. And we want your ideas as to how to get the diaspora more engaged. This is very much its own startup. So we're looking for ideas and help to make that happen. And look, at the end of the day, what's better than helping someone achieve their dream? It's really fun to be a part of this. So what now for Greece? The crisis has had devastating impact on the Greek economy, so let's not waste this opportunity. There's no way we could have gotten to this point with the startups without the crisis. So you can view it from the negative perspective and become bitter and sad, or you can view it from the positive perspective. This is a great opportunity for change for Greece. We can get Greece on a totally different trajectory. Starting up a business used to be foolish. Today, it's realistic. Entrepreneurship provides social mobility, independence, and we here as a group in the Greek diaspora have the power to help the Greeks in Greece to transform the country into something totally different. So I hope you'll be a part of it, and thank you for coming today.
Who is behind the MIT Forum? Is it you running it? Who is it run by?
So MIT Enterprise Forum is run by MIT Technology Review, which has a journal that they publish. And MIT Enterprise Forum Greece is run by Vasilis Papakonstantinou, who's based in Athens, and he reports into the Boston office of MIT Enterprise Forum.
Okay, and from your involvement with the MIT Forum, what do you think of the quality of applications you've gotten so far? there's an annual competition, right?
Yes.
And how many applications do you get every year? Do you know?
So yeah, it's about 70 to 80 applications.
Okay.
And the technologies are all over the board. They're all technology based.
Yeah.
Most of them are software, although not all of them. So in the last cycle, we had this really cool wheelchair that allows the user to be upright, which
Okay.
it was really, they had a prototype that they showed. It was really, really exciting.
And overall, what do you think of the quality? Are there like good and bad ones, or are they most of them are not good, or most of them are good? How does it work?
So it's a range, but generally they're good. Some are sort of ideas that something similar might already exist, but it might not exist in Greece. So
Okay.
it's a new idea for Greece, and some are more innovative. I'm mostly impressed with the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs are incredibly impressive, very smart, very well educated, very hungry and ambitious, and I think, as I say, over time, I think we'll get more and more into the harder science.
Okay. So what we've seen here as Reload Greece is that people are kind of missing the entrepreneurial education, and they have these big ideas, but they don't know how exactly to implement them. So
Exactly.
as Reload, we are trying to go in the lower end, educate people about how to create a business, help them with their business plan development. And I see a great next step for Reload Greece entrepreneurs would be to prepare them and go and apply for the MIT Forum for Greece and go forward.
Exactly.
So there's this train of things that people can go through, and there's a great way we could work together. And one last question on this. How do you see the involvement of the established members of the diaspora? I saw you're obviously doing a call to action. Are people in the US willing to contribute and help young entrepreneurs in Greece or abroad and to succeed?
Yes, very much so. They very much want to help, and they feel a strong connection to Greece.
Okay. So yeah, I think the same thing is here. We see a lot of established members of the diaspora who have knowledge, experience, maybe funds to help young entrepreneurs who are willing to step up and contribute the time for free. And I guess a message here is to entrepreneurs, just stand up and go to someone and ask for help, and people are always willing to help.
Exactly. I mean, I met at a conference recently one of the senior people at Kickstarter, who happens to be Greek, and we were talking about all of this, and he said, send me any of the Greeks, anytime. And I have, and he's so great. He's so nice. He talks to them and helps them out.
Great.